Hello and welcome to the Leaders Council podcast, the podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. You join us in yet another deserted day here in the capital. I'm Matthew O'Neill, and today, as always, we ensure that we have a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership. First, we're joined by Martin Higgins, Chief Executive of House of Martin, a firm that fine-tunes residences and works with domestic staff to entrench impeccable standards of service and organization. Martin, hello.
Hi, Matthew. How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Thank you for coming on the program. We would be remiss if we didn't address the elephant in the room. How is your business coping with the COVID-19 outbreak?
Well, actually not very well, of course. I've got my clients, most of which have various homes in other parts of the country and the world. And of course, as I would, they are moving out of London. So I've got some clients who are self-isolating in the mountains around Stad, others who are entrenched in the Hamptons, and others in LA. So the main thing is that, they're all keeping safe. They've got their living staff who are looking after them and also staying safe. And that's all well. And, this is something which, it's bringing communities together and it's a very leveling experience, I think, as well. So as long as, we keep our spirits up and follow the guidelines that are laid out by, the Prime Minister, then I think we'll get through this all okay.
Now, getting into the field of leadership, as most of my longtime listeners will expect, I love to start the conversation with the simple question, what does the word leader mean to you?
Being a good leader, I think it is somebody who it isn't about giving direction or showing control. It's all about caring for your team and nurturing and teaching. Anybody can, take charge of a situation and delegate and all of this. But I think to have a good team around you who look up to you and respect, and of course, they'll only respect you if you show them respect back, and then learn about them. So, if you've got a good team around you, you want to know, where they want to be. So you can nurture them to, the next level. You can give them training. They come to you as, not necessarily a father figure, but as a leader and, somebody that can show direction they respect and look up to. I think that is so important. I think without that, then, of course, it's that situation when the cat's away, the mouse will play.
Of course.
So you don't have any respect. You don't have any, you have to be there the whole time. And literally you're just doing crisis management as opposed to, a situation as a good leader. I was told by somebody I worked with many, many years ago, is somebody that in a position you can end up almost sort of delegating everything and leaving the cold to others. They just come to you when they don't know what to do, which I think is a good situation. Then it's obviously time to move on to another team and start training them. So, as a leader, you basically are training new leaders, I would say.
Now, how would you describe your personal leadership style?
Very, I like to give, and I think I like to train, and I like to create confidence and harmony. I think you see so many people out there as well who, tend to lead because they think the best way to lead is by shouting at people and telling them what to do, leading by fear. And I think that's completely the wrong thing to do. You want to, as I said before, gain respect. And, I think a lot of it is down, if you're creating a team or have an existing team, is understanding the people that are with you.
Right.
Some of that could be in the, initial recruitment stages. So obviously you want to recruit people who can do the job and, can work with you. And one of the main questions I always ask is, where do you see yourself in an interview in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? So you get to know what that person wants to do in life. And if that in the position that you're offering can help them to that aim, then that's great. And I think if it isn't, I'd say, well, look, I think you're fantastic for the position. However, this may not be taking you to where you want to be, to the next stage in your life. So I think you have to be very honest indeed. And then when that person is with you, it's about giving back. So if you can give back as much wisdom and much of the knowledge that you've learned in your career, whether it be profession or just in everyday life and solution solving, then I think that is a good form of leadership. And that's what I like to promote. And again, somebody where they know that, you've got their back, that you respect them, and that, at the end of the day, as a leader, the buck stops with you. There's no point saying, well, this wasn't done because he didn't do it. No, the reason that wasn't done is because he didn't do it because you hadn't trained him to it, or there was an issue where he didn't know. So I think, you've got to take responsibility. You have to understand your people and know that they're there, you're there for them. Mm-hmm. And again, in my role has been in bustling private households where you're the sort of go-between between family members and staff. And of course, they know that you're going to be representing the staff. At the same time, you're representing the family. So again, there's a lot of diplomacy there. And if they come to you with an issue, then they need to understand that that's private. Mm-hmm. And again, there's a whole issue on, teaching and reprimanding somebody. You do it in a certain way where it won't affect them or they're involved with other people. So you don't tell them off in such a way in front of others or make them demeaning. Everything is all about encouragement and making them grow. And the thing, obviously we all know we're all human. Everybody makes mistakes. And one of the best ways to learn, which I always, teach the people I'm with, is through mistakes. If everything is perfect the whole time, then nothing grows. It's only through bad times and mistakes and errors that we know we can change path and go another direction. So I always, especially if it's in training thing, I encourage people to make mistakes, especially if I'm around. I remember one instance we did a big reception. I think it was an apartment in Manhattan. And, because we had all the catering staff there. Mm-hmm. And, again, the person in control didn't really have a tremendous amount of initiative. So, of course, all the waiting staff were, under his control. So whatever he said, they did. So, of course, initially the people all coming down one staircase, going straight into dinner and all that was fine. Of course, the last minute, they changed. They went through another entrance. And, of course, they didn't change from serving drinks at one door to the other. And it was, it was terrible. So, I think having that initiative so people can know and act and ask questions and feel that they're comfortable doing that to the leader can solve any problems if they're not there.
Before I let you go, I'd like to touch a bit on the beginning of your career. You started out your working life in the royal household. Has that had a major effect on the way that you lead today?
Yes, definitely. I think, two positions. One, before Buckingham Palace, I was in hotel management.
Right.
And in there, I was working at the top part of the hotels. And the main thing I learned there was, doesn't matter what's going on back of house, even if you're reduced to 2 members of staff and you've got the whole thing, whatever happens in the front of house, it doesn't matter. Service goes on as normal. And that's, it's been sort of my mantra from day one. But then going to Buckingham Palace, that was a great experience because it, you're working with the finest silver, the finest crystal, the finest antiques. You're meeting, heads of state, celebrities, anybody who's anybody in society. So, after 3 years of there, it becomes sort of almost the norm. So going from there to any other home, residence, hotel, whatever it may be, you've been used to working with the best of everything, so nothing phases you.
Right.
So you can open the door and it could be, the King of Tonga, and, it doesn't matter. You've met them, you know how to behave. If it's a big celebrity, you don't get stage struck. So that's the main thing that I learned. And of course, standards, which again, in my line of work is paramount. And that's both in your conduct, the way you address people. And again, I think, speaking with a smile, showing kindness, strength, empathy and compassion are, again, key words, especially in leadership when everything starts from the top. All the staff and everything else follow your lead. So if you're an unkind, angry person who doesn't help others, then that's going to reflect it all the way down. If you're somebody who gives, nurtures, shows empathy, understanding, then that can change a situation in any household or any environment very, very quickly. And it works. It really works.
Now, unfortunately, our time has drawn to its close. But before I let you go, what does the next 12 months have in store for House of Martin?
Well, at the moment, I am working on my social media presence, which has been interesting. My book was published a couple of months ago, From Chaos to Calm, and it's about how to create and maintain a well-run household. So that's been exciting. We have created a software program which will aid the organisation for families between, multiple homes, so they can have access to all their information at their fingertips. And if you have staff between, different residents in different time zones, then they can access whatever information is relevant to them, whether it be contacts, inventories, event information, travel schedules, calendars, whatever it may be. So that's something which hasn't existed before in one program, which we're very excited about. And it's going to be promoting that.
Well, Martin,
so, a lot of work ahead.
Sorry?
A lot of work ahead.
Well, Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure discussing leadership with you, and I very much look forward to having you back on the program at some point in the future. Martin, thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you very much indeed.
That was Martin Higgins, Chief Executive of House of Martin and author of From Chaos to Calm. And now, if you haven't heard it before, it's Jonathan White's exclusive interview with Sir Geoff Hurst.
We're now joined, though, by former England footballer and still the only man to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final, Sir Geoff Hurst. Thank you very much for coming on today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good afternoon.
And perhaps I should start and get it over and done with. I know you must be bored with it, and you've probably been asked 1,000 times. But when you got out for a duck playing for Essex, Geoff, what was going through your head at the time?
Well, of course, that's not one of the most asked questions I get. Oh, there are one or two people who are very familiar who do Google me, realise that I did score nothing for Essex. My only game for Essex first team when we played against Lancashire in Liverpool, a place called Egbert in Liverpool, many, many years ago, 1962, I think that was. So I didn't, I didn't really feel it at the time. It was lucky to be playing, I guess. There were one or two injuries. But the problem that I had was really messing about between the two sports. That was very detrimental to me over that period of time, being stuck between the two sports.
And I think for those that don't know, there's another world that might exist where Sir Geoff Hurst was a first-class cricketer and not perhaps a footballer. But whether it's business or cricket or football, obviously the importance of leadership, it can't be understated, no matter what form that comes in. When you were at West Ham, Geoff, and when Ron Greenwood first came along, he made obviously some pretty radical changes. Was this a man that genuinely inspired confidence the first time you'd meet him?
Absolutely. I mean, he was simply a fantastic coach or teacher, if you like, of football. And the quite always mentioned when we talk about Ron Greenwood, Harry Redknapp, who was played under him and has been very successful as a player and the manager over many, many, many years. He's come across many coaches, of course, and managers during his time over years, I guess. He would still say that Ron Greenwood is the best coach he'd worked with. So you're very fortunate. I think you think you're lucky when you come across, if you have a great teacher at school and a great coach as we had in Ron Greenwood, and of course a great manager in Sir Alf Ramsey. So to come across people like that, of that calibre, can have a huge influence on your career, of course, and then your life. And that's quite purely the case.
Absolutely. And in those early days at West Ham, with a manager like Ron there, it's also important to have confidence with your other players. And of course, they become your friends, who did you look to at the time when to inspire confidence in yourself? Was it Peters?
I think probably, well, I was very fortunate to play with the calibre of the players I did. Again, extremely fortunate to play with the captain of England and West Ham and Martin Peters, who was a fantastic player. And as far as Martin's concerned, I think sometimes he didn't quite get the recognition he deserved. What a wonderful player he was. In terms of inspiring confidence, I always probably say that the biggest influence for me, I guess, would be the captain, Bob Noor. Although he was only about 8 months older than me, he graduated through the system probably 3 or 4 years earlier. He played for England in 62, 4 years before the final when I played. And so he was more, looked upon him more as a senior player, if you like, not as a guy with the same age group as me. And I looked at how he trained, how he acted, how he behaved, and how he played. And so he would say, I would also say he was a big influence on me. One thing I would say about leadership, what I do understand clearly in all walks of life, leadership is at the top, is absolutely vital for a business, a football team, in any walk of life to be successful. And it's quite evident. I was in the motor trade for a long time as well, selling car warranties to car dealerships. And you could almost tell when you walked into the business, many of the car dealerships, you could almost tell from the moment you walked in by initial reaction, people came and welcomed you, that the business was well run or conversely not well run at all. And so I understand the value and quality of leadership. And that's why I'm very fortunate to be involved in my career in those early days with two great leaders in Ron Greenwood and Alf Ramsey.
Absolutely. And since you've already brought him up, Jeff, I think it'd be remiss not to go a little bit further with that. But obviously, after at West Ham, your playing came to the attention of Sir Alf Ramsey. Now, there's a man I'm sure when you walked into a room, you knew who was in charge. When it came to managing that England team, what was his style like, Jeff?
Well, the first thing I say about Alf Ramsey, he's probably over my life the most powerful influence who had on me as a person. Naturally, it happens to an extent because he's got your whole career in his hand. Whether he picks you for England or he doesn't pick you, it can have a great impact on your career and, of course, your life. But in that era, I was involved for 6 or 7 years. It was quite clear who was the boss. He was quite very, very strict. Probably at a time, maybe overly strict, but at a time you probably wouldn't necessarily get away with it in today's football because it's changed dramatically in how you deal with players then and players now. But he was the most powerful man I came across, and very few people. And he was quite ruthless in getting people out who didn't want to be part of a group, part of a team. It is important that if you've got a group of people, and that's in any walk of life, they're all singing off the same hymn sheet, and you don't have anybody that's griping or moaning about the system. And if you've got people like that in your organisation, one thing I have learned, and I've taken it on in my life, my family, you've got somebody in the group that doesn't want to be part of it, you get them out. And Alf, I think, was quite ruthless with that in his staff. And I think that's one of the most serious things I think I've learned over a long period of time. And
is there, do you think, a specific moment, I'm sure there's probably dozens, but is there a specific moment, if you could perhaps pick right now, that did show those qualities in Sir Alf so sharply?
Yes, I think for me, certainly, I think there are instances of players who you thought would be in the team or certainly in the squad, and surprisingly they were not. There was no necessary reason for it, but looking back, I do think perhaps they were people that Alf didn't think wanted to be part of a group. So that's for me. In terms of my personal view, I think that it looked prior to the World Cup that I was going to be playing in it only a few games before. I was playing, and I played with Jimmy Greaves in a game against Yugoslavia only a couple of months before the final. And it looked at that stage as if I was going to be playing in the team. But in a couple of more friendly games before the final in Poland and Norway, I think, and Denmark. I didn't. I played 2 of the 4 games, and I probably didn't quite replicate my form that I'd been showing at West Ham and in the early couple of games for England. And he left me out in the first game of the World Cup against Uruguay. He started off with Jimmy Greaves and Roger Hunt. So I had an impact of thinking at that stage I was going to play, and didn't start because of just a lack of form. I didn't play quite well enough to justify my position. And somewhat fortuitously, I only got back in the team because of a nasty gashed shin on Jimmy Greaves' leg.
And I think what you've said there, Jeff, actually does sum that up really well. And more than that, whilst it's important to have that someone in charge with those qualities, it's almost useless if there isn't a strong and unified team behind them. And there really must have been moments, Jeff, maybe there weren't, but let us know, in that 66 competition, the prolonged pressure on all of you, the weight of a nation, did it get to you?
Oh, not for me personally, no. I think, and I don't, not for me, not for a second. I think I was just happy to be involved in the squad initially. Not at all. You're not aware of the magnitude of the occasion, really, looking back out. So I never really felt, people talk about pressure a lot, and it's there, and people talk about it in life. I didn't really necessarily feel any great pressure during the time I was there. And what is also important to say about Alf Ramsey, the people he left behind that were left in the squad after he'd moved 1 or 2 players out, the squad were a bunch of very hard-nosed, professional, top-quality people. And that was, again, the leadership that Al showed. He got people in together that were very, very strong personally. And I think that was part of the success we had. We were I always describe our group as hard-nosed professionals. We have some great players, but overall they were great hard-nosed professional players. And great quality people who we've kept in contact with, over the years.
And Jeff, I've got to ask, and I'm not making this up, I've genuinely heard that people do ask you whether or not you realise there were people on the pitch at that moment. I imagine you were busy on something else. Well,
I did some theatre shows last year, and they've gone fairly well, and we're going to do a series of theatre shows, in fact, starting this week, over the next 2 or 3 months. And at the end of the theatre shows, we have about 20 minutes where we allow the people in the audience to ask questions. And I won't mention both. They're too long to talk about both questions. The other one's a really stupid one. It's too long for me to tell you. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the other ridiculous question I get asked, did I realise there were people on the pitch? And of course, I jokingly say, yes, I was just about to shoot to score the goal. And I looked round, put my foot on the ball, and looked round for a little while and said, oh dear, there are 6 or 7 people running on the pitch. So I've been asked that once at one of the theatre shows. So I make a joke about that and saying, yes, I put my foot on the ball and waited to just have a glance round,
Maybe it does prove there are things such as stupid questions, really.
Oh, yeah, there certainly are. I've got another one which I won't bore you into. It's too long to tell you. I was in a Jersey or Channel Line, Jersey or Guernsey 2 or 3 years ago, and most stupid, irrelevant questions, absolutely nothing to do with football whatsoever, which was absolutely, but I can use that now because it is quite funny.
Well, maybe another time then, but we...
well, you want me? I can tell you if you want. You got time? I can tell you if you want.
Jeff, go on. Go. I think it would be silly if I said no at this point.
Okay, so I was doing at a dinner in the Channel Lines, 300 or 400 people, black tie dinner, guest of honour. On this occasion, I was speaking for about 20 minutes, then allowing questions from the audience at the end of the evening. And there was usual football questions, and then all of a sudden I heard somebody at the back who asked a question. I didn't quite hear what he said. He didn't have the microphone with him, so I said, I didn't hear what he said. Can you please give this chap the microphone so I can hear clearly what he said? So the chap had the mic, and he said, when a turtle loses its shell, is it naked or is it homeless?
Right. What a question! What a question!
I think that would be definitely in the stupid category, wouldn't it? So we had a laugh about that.
You've got to have a patient of a saint, I think, sometimes to put up with things like that. But then again,
I found it amusing. I just found it amusing. In fact, some of the audience found it highly amusing as well. So it did make me laugh that day.
If you can put up with my questions, you can probably put up with anything. But there would have become a point, though, Jeff. I think you were a young man when obviously this happened, when you must have realised that teammates, began looking at you for leadership. Is that something that occurred to you, or did you just realise that by one way or the other, people actually begin to look up for you for inspiration?
Well, possibly. That's never really struck me until you've actually mentioned it now, quite frankly. It's a new question. Does anybody look up to me? I'm sure perhaps there are people who pay you compliments of fans of West Ham and Stoke, and of course England fans who I think probably it would be very immodest of me to suggest that I felt that somebody was looking to me for inspiration.
You don't have to, but I will.
It's okay for a third party to do it. Perhaps that may have been the case over the years. People look at you and maybe it has a helpful effect. But I do think how you behave and set examples on and off the pitch is, people must realise that has an influence. How you react and behave to situations on and off the field surely probably has an impact to younger players coming into the team latterly.
And with that, looking at football today, is there anybody that you think, particularly on the field or the sidelines, that strikes you as someone with those qualities that you could identify in a natural leader?
Well, current players, you mean?
Oh, players, managers, anybody that you look to today, really?
Well, I think some of the outstanding. I think the best example about a leader at the moment is Klopp at Liverpool. He has been absolutely fantastic to acquire the players and get them to. Their attitude is absolutely fantastic. They're great players, but there's more than just being good players in football. It is have a good player with a fantastic attitude, and their willingness to work for each other and the team is absolutely outstanding. Hence these unbelievable results. There are, and the great players not always succeed as individuals, or probably even certainly as a team if you haven't got the right attitude alongside it. And they're probably, and that comes through the leadership. That's not just luck.
Absolutely.
That's absolute leadership. He'd be the best example, of course, in football terms today. Easily. And of course, going back not that long ago, Alex Ferguson, who's just absolutely, you've got to take him as the first example, because Klopp's only done this over a period of time, a short period of time. But if you look at the 26, 27 years that Alex Ferguson did with Manchester United, and subsequently since he's gone, how they are not doing so well. He's the best example of management we've probably ever seen, and I don't think anybody will see the like of that kind of leadership again. It's absolutely astonishing.
And do you think, could you imagine Sir Alf or even Ron Greenwood managing teams today?
Yes, I think so. I think, yes, no question at all. I think Ron Greenwood, well, the answer, straightforward answer is yes.
That's a good answer.
The straightforward answer is yes. I can elaborate as much as you want, but the straight answer is absolutely categorically yes.
And with, and I know if we could talk about this probably for the next hour or so, but I'm conscious of the time. Looking back through your playing career, perhaps especially your time for England, who was it that struck you more than anyone else on the pitch that displayed qualities of not just leadership, but companionship and level-headedness that you think that have stuck with you all these years later?
Well, I think I was very fortunate, and I wouldn't pick any one player out. I think looking at that,
so many,
and that's why we were successful, because we had so many showing all those qualities that you just mentioned throughout the team. I think that was outstanding, and it's an opportunity to talk about all of them in that breath. And there was nobody, and going back from an earlier question for me, that all hard-nosed professionals, good teammates, good socially, and that's why we kept in touch with each other on our golf days every year up until about 5 years ago. Of course, with the sadly dwindling numbers, we still got on. Our wives got on all together all those years later. It didn't just finish after '66. That reunion, that camaraderie, that team spirit, getting on with each other lasted for a long time. And I wouldn't, when you put those questions and how you categorise those, I would pick every one of the 11 players who you put in that category that were like that. There was nobody else. They were all outstanding. And I think that was a big part. I can't stress how big a part that was. And I've said that many times, for the success of the team. We had some great players. We had some great players, of course. But without the attitude alongside that, going back to an earlier question, we wouldn't have been as ultimately as successful.
Exactly. Without that, the whole will never be greater than the sum of its parts. But with it,
yes, the word is team. The word is team.
Absolutely.
And I always use the word team when I talk. Sometimes together, everyone achieves more, and that's the same in any walk of life. That's fundamental.
And lastly, Jeff, looking, if you were to give advice, and whether this is in sport or business or indeed any other walk of life, what would you identify, if you can, as the key tenet that you can't go without in terms of leading a team, no matter what that team is?
Single-mindedness, dedication to the job, thinking about that role, that job in leadership all the time. It's a huge part of your life. I don't think you can switch off when you're in business at the top level or sport at the top level. You may, have a couple of weeks holiday, but I'm even sure if these top managers and leaders in all walks of life are away on holiday on a beach somewhere warm, I'm sure they will not switch off for 2 weeks and completely not think about their role as the boss of an organisation. And I think you're completely focused. You're always thinking about things, thinking about improvements, and it's just dedication and tuning your life to being successful.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, on that point, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Very good nice to have a talk about this and just go over the past and just refresh my own memory about the quality of the players I grew up with.
Excellent. Another time, it would be great to talk again.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
This has been the Leaders Council podcast. Thank you for celebrating excellence in leadership with us. I have been your host, Matthew O'Neill. Until next time, goodbye. Thank you for listening to our podcast. The views expressed within the podcast do not reflect the views of the Leaders Council of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, its parent company or subsidiaries, members of staff, other guests, or any other person therein associated.